So this next quality has to do with pausing. Okay? Something the wounded boy man never does. He won't do, he refuses. And so this idea to me comes from the existentialist philosopher Rollo May, and he said, freedom is the capacity to pause between stimulus and response. I'll say it again. Freedom is the capacity to pause between stimulus and response. Now I'm asking all of you to think about the last little argument you got in with your sweetheart. I bet you didn't pause. And I bet they didn't pause, or somebody wasn't pausing. Because in the pause, the miracle can happen where we begin to develop what the mystics call that witness, where we begin to see our trigger, and where the wounded boy or the wounded girl is now driving the car. And remember, the wounded boy and the wounded girl has a very singular consciousness, very black and white. They say things like always and never. You might have had that conversation this morning. Pausing. And in the pause, you begin to see how the wounded boy comes up and wants to take over and run things. And it can actually ruin your life. It ruins a lot of marriages. It keeps me employed, but it ruins a lot of relationships, this lack of pausing. So it's a very serious thing, and it's, you know, there's humor because we seem to be unable to do anything about it, but I'm here to say we can practice this pausing. So in the pause is what Jung called also the opportunity to hold the tension of opposites. And the tension of opposites, let me just throw some your way. Solitude and intimacy. How are you with those? Intimacy in our relationships, and then solitude in our relationships. Can you hold both? That would be holding the tension of opposites. Or is it just intimacy or just solitude? Another one would be wildness and responsibility. And how many of us men and women come home from work, and as soon as we walk into the life of domesticity, our wildness just kind of shrinks away and falls away. So can you hold your wildness and your responsibility together? The one we're going to work with today is love and power. And I say work with because I'm going to dare to bring an experience in the room here. And here it is. So I'm going to pass this basket around, and I'm going to ask everybody to take a stick and a sage flower, okay? Just a little sage flower. And I'll tell you what this is all about. Please, just pass it around. Carl Jung said that love is the shadow of power, and power is the shadow of love. It's interesting because recently I've become told that in Course of Miracles it's love and fear. And I respect that, and I can see how everything is also about love and fear. In this model, because of what's happening in our culture, I think it's especially relevant because the wounded boy man sees power as something you get. And so some people have power and then some people don't have power. That's the way that paradigm goes. I'm here to tell you there's a little bit different spin on it, is that when we don't really get power, that's an old, archaic model of power over or power under. So there's a winner and there's a loser with that model. So what I'd like you to do when you get the stick and the flower is I'd like you to identify the hand you want to hold power, that's the stick. And the hand you want to identify the flower, and that's love. And I want to challenge this paradigm of power is something you get and have over. This is what we've all been taught. This is our conditioning. And I want to challenge that with bringing in what Carl Jung said is the shadow side of power is love. He said wherever power predominates, love is lacking. And wherever love is predominating, power is lacking. And I'd like you to hold this stick and this flower and just get a feel for it. And I'd like everybody to stand up, if you would, with your stick and your flower. I think this might interrupt the videotape. Oh well, we're here to have an experience. So, yeah, get your stick and your flower, and I'd like you to just hold them and get a feel for these. Notice what it feels like to hold love in one hand and power in the other. Does everybody have one? Or two, I should say? So feel what that's like. Love and power, stick and flower. And just for a moment, I'd like to ask you to put the flower down on your chair. And I want you to imagine that, you know that old saying that if you only have a hammer, everything's a nail? Well, it's a little bit like this. You're a stick man, stick woman now, and you're all about power. And I want you to imagine every word that comes out of your mouth, every action that you take is coming from power. What does that feel like? Anybody want to tell me what that feels like?
Feels a little bit like bullying.
Yeah. Power without love tends towards tyranny. It just does. Anybody else?
Isolation.
Isolation, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel anxious about it.
You feel anxious about it. So we got bullying, isolation, and anxiousness. So we're off to a good day here. Anything else?
Certainty.
Certainty. You hear that?
Self-glory.
Self-glory. Wow. Anybody feeling a little unsafe? What else?
Feels like war.
Feels like war. Yeah, thank you.
Violence.
Violence. All right, we've had just about enough of this, right? So put the stick down. For God's sakes, put the stick down. Now pick up the flower. And now you're a lover of life. You're a lover of everything. You speak love. You feel love for all living things. Don't be so sure where I'm going with this. What's it feel like?
Fragile.
Fragile.
Vulnerable.
Vulnerable.
Submissive.
Submissive.
Transporting.
Transporting. Okay.
Weak.
Weak. Love without power, you end up with tire tracks up and down your body. Because there's no spine here, see? We know a lot about this in Ojai. I can take shots at Ojai, I'm in Ventura. We have 50 or 60-year-old men riding skateboards that are really nice guys. But you don't want them watching your kids, okay? They're lovers of life. Isn't that lovely? Now, pick up the stick and hold your arms out like in a wingspan, and I want you to get a sense of the love energy coming into your heart and this power energy, we're not sure where that comes from, coming into your heart, and you got this alchemy happening. So now you got powerful love and loving power. What's that feel like?
Balance.
Balance?
Capacity.
Capacity.
Tension.
Tension.
Collaborative.
Collaborative. Interesting. Somebody else.
Presence.
Presence. Presence. Does it feel disorienting to anybody? It kind of feels weird to me, especially when I'm not used to that. I'm the only misfit here. What else?
Balance.
Choice.
Balance again. Choice. So you have choice here. Thank you.
Strangers.
There's an interesting peacefulness that's come over the room right now. There was a lot of tension with the other two ways. Okay, thank you, and you can sit down now, and you can have these to keep if you'd like. If not, you can put them back in the basket. Thank you for doing that with me. I do this in the private counseling room a lot with men who have suffered greatly, like we all have, from this horrible conditioning of power over or power under. I don't know how many athletes there are in the room, but when I was an athlete, I got really kind of perplexed and frustrated by only having two choices, win or lose. That seemed a little small to me. Having a good time went right out after, I don't know, it was about 10 or 12. So I think we need a bigger imagination when it comes to our athletics about win-lose and in life in general. So the wounded boy man does not know how to do what you just did. Love and power, solitude and intimacy, wildness, responsibility. And there's many, many of these tensions of opposites. But the adult initiated man begins to have a relationship with these tensions. And I think artists know a lot about this place because it kind of tears us up inside. Yeah. So I don't know if that's like 6 or where we are, but that's the pause. Try it on with your relationships. Try it on with your boss or colleague. See what it's like to pause before you speak, to pause before you take an action, and maybe breathe 3 times. See if it makes a difference, to notice the wounded boy or the wounded girl. And I'll leave you with this also. One of my favorite authors, James Hillman, said, when you shift from being the wound to having a wound and holding the wounded boy or the wounded girl from the adult, he said that's worth about 2 years of therapy right there. The realization of shifting from being the wound to having a wound. You follow? So the adult, yes, there is an adult here, has a relationship with this wounded boy. That shifts everything. Okay?